Hi everyone, I'm Sarah Spiker and I'm here today to give you a good structure for how to construct your introduction to your public speaking event. Now, many of you start off with public speaking with traditional essay writing, and that's fine. Whatever you've learned in your English Comp 1 and 2 class is probably still going to be applicable here. But there are a few tips and tricks on how best to construct a winning speech. Now remember, I come from the competitive speech and debate world, so this is fluid and flexible. You don't have to follow it to a T, but I would suggest that this is my recommended way of seeing an introduction in a speech. Like literally, if you give a speech and follow these introductory elements to a T, you're gonna my heart's gonna wanna go give him an A, give him an A, give him an A, okay? So I'm going to give you an example from one of my competitive speech days regarding something known as dexamethasone, which treats a condition known as CAH. But I'm also going to give you the structure so that you can also see what it looks like and how it actually is applied to speech writing. So let's start off with the parts of a speech. So again, these are required, but not required, but generally good form. The first part is an attention-getting device. We've been told this in Comp 1 and Comp 2, and we've been told this since we were children writing essays. Now, you can start your attention-getting device, or what's known as an AGD, in many different ways. I'm not a huge fan of the rhetorical question. Narratives, stories work really well as long as they're real stories. And although it's okay to use personal stories in your attention-getting device, I personally often shy away from telling my story, and I like to tell stories about other people instead. And that's in this example I'll give you later. You'll see that I tell the story of someone else. So the first part is done. You get your attention-getting device, but how do I move from an attention-getting device into my topic? Part 2 is what's known as a linking statement. This linking statement or phrase moves you into the background information. We'll see this when we dissect the speech I give you in a second. Part 3 is your background information. Now, usually in most speeches, I would require some sort of verbal citation here. According to this source on this date, here's the info they have. This background information needs to be constructed in a way that someone who has no knowledge of the topic suddenly has all the information that they need to know in order to be like, oh, I got it. That's what they were saying, okay? Or this is what they're addressing. Part 4 is your significant statement. Part 4 is answering the question, why does this matter, right? Why is anyone going to sit through a 3, 4, or 10-minute speech listening about this topic, right? Does it affect a lot of people? If so, give me a source that says how many people it affects on a regular basis. Is it an issue of cultural value? Let me know what that cultural value is, right? Give me something to tell me answering the so what question. Why does it matter? So what? Part 5 would be your central question. This doesn't happen in all speech formats, but your central question would kind of lead into part 6, which is your thesis. So for certain speech types, and you should check with the exact guidelines that I've given you in your learning management system, sometimes you'll have a central question, sometimes you won't. But you will always have part 6, which is your thesis. Even if it is an informative topic, which I'm going to give you an informative speech example, you would think, well, I'm not trying to persuade you, so why am I answering a question? But even still, that can tie into your significance. Perhaps the central question is the significance statement. Some of these can overlap a little bit. Once you have answered that in part 6 with your thesis, you need to give me a good, solid, central thesis statement for your paper. Part 7 then is your preview statement. Your preview statement is going to basically say, okay, I've got 3 body paragraphs. In order to answer this question, right, with this answer, we're going to hit parts 1, 2, and 3, whatever it may be. Now, the preview statement should match up on your speech outline with your specific purpose statement. Remember, we have those little blank spots for the 3 things that you're going to do? This is where your preview statement literally says, guess what? This is what we're doing. Part 1, part 2, part 3. And it's just one sentence. Then the last thing you do is you transition into your first body point. Now, sometimes people consider that to be part of the introduction. I like to consider that to be part of your actual main point itself. And if you watched my other videos about what to do with your hands and feet, the transition statement is the statement where your hand and your foot follow each other in the same direction and lead you into a new spot in the front of the room. So if you have questions, always feel free to text message reminds me. So let's look at an exact example. This comes from my senior year speech, competitive speech at the college level, regarding dexamethasone use. So we're going to read this and we're going to kind of break down each of the parts. So I'm going to read it through once and then we're going to go back through and kind of break down the individual bits. 25-year-old Becky Roach has been in and out of hospitals since birth for congenital adrenal hyperplasia, or CAH. Born with ambiguous male and female genitalia, Becky's parents decided surgery was the best option and removed her male organs to make her look female. Although she identifies as a female, Becky recalls knowing that something was missing. Years of corrective surgeries and hormone therapies have created a lifelong psychological and physical struggle with her diagnosis. According to Medscape's clinical reference, last updated April 19, 2010, CAH occurs in 1 in 16,000 births. In the past, children with CAH have faced 3 options: death from failure to diagnose, surgery to correct, and/or a lifelong regimen of hormone treatments. However, a new prenatal pill called dexamethasone, or simply Dex, may change all that. Dex has proven successful in reducing the prevalence of ambiguous genitalia and thus eliminating the need for a lifetime of surgeries and hormonal therapies. It also has an interesting side effect. According to the Los Angeles Times on August 15, 2010, the pill has the ability to chemically steer a child's sexual orientation. As a result, baby girls treated in utero are substantially less likely to identify as lesbians later in life. Ken Zucker, psychologist-in-chief of the Center for Addiction and Mental Health in Toronto, explains on August 15, 2010, that this treatment is so controversial because it not only treats genital differentiation, but also postnatal behavior. In order to understand this new prenatal CAH pill, we will first analyze how the CAH pill works, the interesting side effects of the drug, and its implications. And then after that, I would move into my transition statement into my first speech. So I'm going to copy this and put this as well as the structure in the comments or in the information description section of this video, but let's kind of break it down. We start off with that attention-getting device of the story of Becky Roach. We document her struggle with not only her surgery, but feeling with the lifelong physical and psychological issues she has later. It's a compelling narrative, or at least we thought so. But then we have to bring us into our actual background. So part 2 is our linking statement. Our linking statement gets us from the story of Becky Roach to the larger issue at play. Okay? So after we give her story, I indicate, using a source, my Medscape's clinical reference, that her condition occurs in 1 in 16,000 births. So now we are widening with our linking statement into a much larger issue here. And then I talk about how children in general, so we move from a specific case to a general case, have faced 3 options, right? And now how a new pill coming on the market may change that. But in order to give you all the background information, we need you to know basically what dexamethasone or Dex does. So I tell you kind of how it works and why it's important. And also why it's controversial, because it's not just fixing genital differentiation, but chemically steering a child's sexual orientation. So we kind of give you the controversy to begin with. That leads into the significance statement, all right? Why is this controversial? Why is it interesting? But also the so what factor is also the fact that it could save children from a lifelong struggle that Becky Roach felt. That physical and psychological trauma and years of counseling could be solved if we can prevent the problem in the first place. So that would be the significance statement. After our significance statement, we're really kind of moving into our more general central question and thesis here. Now again, because we're not really dealing with a persuasive speech, there's not an outright central question, although I do give you the controversy. In this particular speech, your central thesis question is going to be talking about how these lifelong struggles originate shortly after conception and how dozens of surgeries and lifetime of popping hormonal pills can be very taxing, how this can change those sorts of things, okay? So again, this is just an informative speech. Here we say, using one of my sources, that the treatment is so controversial because of its postnatal behavior effect. So that's really more of where we're working at. And I kind of lead that in with my last sentence, which is, in order to understand this new prenatal CAH pill, that's our thesis. We are going to understand this new prenatal CAH pill. And I tie that immediately to my preview statement, okay? Which is the 1, 2, and the 3. So in order to understand this new prenatal CAH pill, we will first analyze how the CAH pill works. Ding, 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 there's my first point. Comma, the interesting side effects of the drug. That's my second point. And its implications. There's my third. So some of this may be difficult to just kind of like listen and try to visualize where things are. I would highly encourage you to look at the description. We'll put all of this up there so you can kind of see and kind of mentally start compartmentalizing where all of this stuff is. The goal for this is for you to have a really good, solid introduction that you can just beast the rest of your presentation on, okay? So introductions should be pretty much memorized. You want to maintain that eye contact with your audience. And if you're looking at your note card, first off, we'll have a whole note card video on its own. You don't put note cards ever in front of your face, right? You hold them at a reasonable level and kind of out and away from you so that they're reference. Your introduction should not be on your note card because you should have your introduction memorized. Now, that was an introduction for a 10-minute full speech, right? A lot of yours are not that long. They're like 3 or 4 minutes, 5 minutes to 7 minutes. Your introduction is going to be shorter. But if you follow the structure, you'll be in great shape to kick butt on that presentation.